Hi, it's Manic44 here, and today I invite you to the review of the Gate Titan V2. At the start, I would like to thank the Gate Enterprise for making the unit available for the review. If you subscribe to my channel for a while, you surely know that I like to review MOSFET units. I already had several of them on my channel from various manufacturers, and from Gate I reviewed the Aster and the Bluelink Bluetooth adapter. But it is the Titan, an older brother of Aster, that I wanted the most to review. But let's start from the beginning, for those who don't know what I'm talking about. The Gate Titan unit is an advanced MOSFET that replaces the classic contacts and cutoff lever, thus eliminating two elements in the gearbox that wear out over time and start to cause problems. But that's not all. The unit itself works on the basis of optical sensors that do not have physical contact with the moving elements in the gearbox, thanks to which it guarantees a theoretically trouble-free operation. Theoretically, because they can get dirty, for example. We have 8 sensors, all of them I will show you in a moment on the unit itself, but 2 sensors are responsible for detecting the movement of selector plate. One sensor for literally counting the teeth on the sector gear, thanks to which the unit knows exactly what movement it made, and as many as 5 sensors responsible for detecting the movement of the trigger. Speaking of the trigger itself, I must add that today I will be also reviewing the Nova trigger from Gate, which you can see I already installed in the replica. Gate Titan, apart from the benefit it gives us from replacing the contacts and the cutoff lever, it will give us a quicker reaction to the trigger and a whole range of programmable options, from fire modes through precocking, and even separate profiles to which we have access by changing it with the trigger and selector, but in the expert software. Before we move on to the Titan itself, it's worth highlighting a few differences between it and its younger brother Aster, because contrary to what it might seem, Aster is not just a newer unit, it's a product with a different application than Titan. The Titan was designed from the very beginning to be used in extreme tuning, when the Aster is more for ordinary replicas. But how it manifests itself? First of all, Titan can work with 14.8 volt LiPo batteries, and Aster can work only with 11.1 volt max. It's important because it allows, for example, to build an extreme DSG replica with very high rate of fire. How high? Well, the Titan can handle a rate of fire up to 100 bbs per second, while the Aster only 50. In addition, at last, in my opinion, if you want to achieve a hair trigger, that is a trigger that will respond to the slightest touch, it will be much easier to perform on the Titan, especially with the Nova trigger, or any other adjustable trigger. Due to the simple fact that Titan has as many as 5 sensors responsible for the trigger and Aster only has 1, acting on the principle of amount of reflected light. That's all for the introduction. Today I will be installing the unit in my Spetsna Arms SAE10, in which I will just replace its younger brother, but as standard, let's start with a small unboxing. The Titan unit as a premium product come to us in a very elegant black cardboard box. The reviewed unit is in the expert version. The first thing to greet us inside is a large patch powered by Titan. Next is a large quick start guide that will guide me through installation of the unit in the replica. In a small cardboard box with accessories we will find selector plate sticker set, Titan stickers and the Gate logo, needed mounting screws in the size of M2 and M2.5 with washers, and a set of connectors and thermal wells. Last is the Gate Titan unit itself, in this case wired to the rear. As for the Nova trigger itself, it comes to us in a foil and a small cardboard. At the moment we have the choice of triggers in 3 styles and 8 colors. I chose the gold colored 2B1 trigger. We know what I will be working with today, so let's see how the installation in my Spetsna Arms SAE10 looks like. As I mentioned, I'm going to upgrade from Aster to Titan. I did not do it because I don't like something about the Aster, because the unit works well, but because the E10 is the replica I use most often, so I wanted to have the best MOSFET. I will start, of course, by removing all the parts from the shell. Together with the quantum trigger and the Aster unit, this set will be installed in another replica. As you can see, the selector board does not have a sticker. This is due to the fact that it is quite bright and reflects light nicely, and it's possible that it would work in this way also with the Titan. But since I have a whole set, I will mount a sticker on it, but I will cut this top first to make the surface even. That's better, now I can mount a sticker from the kit. Before installing the unit, I thoroughly cleaned the shell of grease using a cloth soaked in isopropyl alcohol. Let's take a look at the unit itself. It's made of two boards, the upper one and the lower one. After separating, we can look at the upper one first. On it we find an illuminating diode for the sensor for detecting the position of the sector gear. As I mentioned, the unit literally counts the teeth of the sector gear, thanks to which it's able to very precisely control the firing cycle. The upper board also has 5 sensors responsible for detecting the trigger movement. Trigger is illuminated by an infrared diode on the lower board and casts a shadow on them, thanks to which we have such a high precision of setting the trigger sensitivity. On the lower board you will find a previously mentioned sensor detecting the movement of the sector gear and an illuminating diode for the trigger position detecting sensor that I mentioned a moment ago. On the other side, a diode and 2 sensors corresponding to the selector plate position detection. I can start the installation of the unit itself. I make sure that it lies correctly in the shell, and then I screw it with the empty screw from the set, not forgetting about the correct order of the washers. In the Orion gearbox from Spetsna Arms Edge E10, I did not have to make any modifications to make the MOSFET fit. Then I arrange the cables. It's not an easy task because they are quite hard, but after laying them down, they stay in their place. I can install the Nova trigger. The trigger has 2 adjustment screws, one for pre-travel, that is how far the trigger is extended in the resting position, so as to shorten the movement needed to be detected by the sensors, and over-travel, how far the trigger can be pressed. Thanks to this screw we can prevent it from being pressed further after it's detected by the sensor, which can help in faster shooting. The screws themselves have a long lock, thanks to which they should not loosen from vibrations and they do not need to be glued permanently. Unlike the quantum trigger dedicated to the Aster unit, Nova can also be used with classic contacts and even HPA powered replicas. The trigger itself is therefore mounted in the same way as any other trigger, just install the spring from the old trigger. However, in order to have a maximum precision of the movement, it is worth shimming it so it does not swing sideways. As you can see, it has a lot of play in my case. I will use ordinary washers for the gears for this. That's better. Too much sideways movement would mean that especially when adjusting for the hair trigger, replica could shoot even when the trigger is pressed from the side. After the trigger is installed and top board is mounted, I can put the shell back together and adjust the trigger. After connecting the power supply and connecting with the GCS application with the blue link to the Titan unit, I can start the adjustment. It is not easy because the long lock screws are quite resistant. I recommend loosening them a bit before the adjustment itself. With the upper screw, which I adjust by inserting the Allen key from the top of the shell, I set the point where the movement should start. I want the shot to be fired with a slight press of the trigger. You can set it practically to the touch, but I like to have a minimum of play. I set the over travel with the second screw. That is how far after detecting the movement the trigger should move. Here I also set minimum clearance because I like to feel under my finger that the trigger actually made some movement. After setting the trigger, I installed the sector gear. In my case, it's the DSG gear from SHS. At the time of installation, I make sure that it does not touch the top board. It could break the sensor and damage the unit. Here I have visible clearance, so I do not have to worry. A trained eye must have noticed that the GB shell is cracked, and during the test I managed to kill it completely. Aster in telemetry showed me that the unit already has over 25,000 shots, and these were shots fired in stock after installing a short stroke gears, and finally with the DSG on M150 spring, so it was a good result for the Orion. Before I start programming, I replaced the shell with a modified JG shell. The Titan unit gives us a whole lot of functions to choose from. Depending on the version of our software, these options are often additionally expanded. I must mention at this point that it is possible to buy a unit with a basic software, but if you want to use functions from other versions, a paid upgrade to a higher version of the software will be required. If I would like to present them all, I will have to do a separate video, so I will help myself with the card with all the functions listed depending on the software we have installed. But the most important categories from the top are: Fire Selector mode. Depending on the version, we have choice of either combination of modes, or we can just set each mode separately. Of course, the following modes are available: safe, semi, auto, adjustable burst, binary and their combinations. Precocking, that is pre-compressing the spring before the shot, which shortens the time from pressing the trigger to the shot. Magazine functions, after how many shots the replica is supposed to simulate reloading and how long it lasts, with a signal when there is a small amount of ammunition or without. Serious safety limit, a useful function if we do not want to be able to have an endless series of shots. Sniper delay, delay between shots adjustable in seconds. Rate of fire control, useful if the replica cycles very quickly, which is useful for semi, but we do not want to have a crazy rate of fire in full auto. Battery discharge protection. Active brake, the unit after completing the cycle gives a voltage of a reverse polarity for a fraction of a second, which stops the motor, which allows to avoid, for example, double shots on semi. Trigger functions like equalizer, which allows you to shorten the trigger path when resetting after a shot is taken. The levers are set by 1 or 2 sensors. In addition, the unit has telemetry and diagnostic functions. Depending on the software, it can inform us about a lot of useful data. And with the expert version of the software, we can additionally set separate settings for free profiles that we have access to through the trigger and selector, which I will present in a moment. So let's see how I programmed my unit. Some functions can be programmed with the trigger and selector only, but for full functionality you should purchase a USB link adapter or, like in my case, a wireless blue link. For the best operation of the unit in the sector gear operation, I choose the DSG, of course, but as we can see we have several options, but remember that the unit will not work with infinite torque gears. In the options of profiles I have included them along with the option of changing them through the trigger and selector. 3.2 volt battery protection with automatic cell number detection. The serious safety limit is 40 shots. The trigger is set very short, and if it gets stuck on full auto for some reason, I prefer the replica to stop firing by itself after 40 shots. Active brake in adaptive mode, which means that the unit will detect the optimal value by itself. The trigger is adjusted so the first sensor is passed and a slight pressure activates the second sensor. The trigger itself, thanks to the over travel adjustment, will not go beyond the second sensor. From a closer look, the trigger movements looks as follows. You can of course shorten it both ways to get to the point that it will be activated practically by a gentle touch, but I prefer to have a bit of movement to feel the trigger better. Precocking off. With the DSG gear I do not notice the difference. When it comes to fire modes, here I will use the profile function. I have safe semi-auto set in first profile, in second profile safe semi-semi, in case anyone has a problem that I have full auto with a DSG. In third profile safe semi 3-round burst. I will set binary and burst, but more and more often I encountered a ban on using binary. This mode means that the shot is fired each time the trigger is pressed and released. Now, how to enter profiles? It's very simple. Just hold the trigger in safe mode after a semi or burst shot in the range of 2 to 7 seconds and switch the selector to appropriate number of times. Each beep of the unit will mean a given profile. 1 beep, first profile, safe semi-auto. 2 beeps, second profile, safe semi-semi. And 3 beeps, third profile, safe semi 3-round burst. Each MOSFET unit consumes some power when idle, so you should not leave the battery connected to the replica if you're not shooting from it. When the Titan is idle with the selector set to safe, it only uses about 0.4 mA. With the selector set to the semi, consumption increases to 24.5 mA, and in full auto mode it jumps slightly to 24.7 mA. Gate Titan, despite its several years on the market, it's hard to call it an obsolete unit. Continuous software updates and new functions and the implementation of sensors responsible for detecting the status of individual parts of the gearbox still fulfill their task, and are even copied by some manufacturers, as we saw, for example, during the review of the Double Eagle replica. If I were to compare it with the Aster unit, it was easier to me to assemble it through a two-board construction and no need to stick a sticker inside the shell, which sometimes gives us problems. I also liked the way the Titan works with the Nova trigger, which is physically adjustable thanks to the screws, and which gives us the certainty that the trigger will always be detected in the same way. In Quantum Trigger, the sensitivity was amazing, and the ability to set the trigger detection location was also amazing, but I had the impression that after each calibration the trigger worked a bit different, and I had to eyeball the setting to be similar to previously. Here I tightened the screw once, and I hope it will stay that way thanks to use of the long lock, and no matter what I do, the trigger will work the same all the time. Certainly, installation of the Titan in this replica is quite an overkill. After all, with the current performance of the replica, Aster was able to deal with it easily and even had a slight headspace for performance. But here is the superiority of the Titan, because it gives me a very large reserve, which I will say made me want to delve deeper into the topic of DSG in order to take advantage of that unused potential. SAE10 on the 11.1 volt to 1200 mAh battery gives me about 35 RPS, and I think with a stronger battery I can hit over 60, because I want to make it sound on semi almost like HPA. Who knows, maybe I will do it. For whom would I recommend the Titan unit to? Well, for someone who will make an absolute extreme replica, who needs a power reserve, and if he still wants to have an ultra sensitive trigger, I recommend the Titan with the Nova trigger, and for full possibilities with advanced or expert software. However, if you are looking for a unit, for a normal replica, and you care about similar programmable functions as the Titan has, and you would like a unit from Gate offer, a more economical choice will be of course the Gate Aster unit with a Quantum trigger. Anyway, when entering the Gate ecosystem, remember that purchases of the basic version itself may not be enough. In order to enjoy all the functions I mentioned and to easily program the unit, you should first have a unit with an appropriate version of the software for you, and each higher level is a bit more expensive. Secondly, we have to obtain an adapter to connect to it, USB link or more expensive Blue link. And finally, choose an appropriate trigger. If we decide on the Aster for maximum sensitivity, we'll need a dedicated Quantum trigger from Gate, and in the case of Titan, any other trigger of our choice. But I personally recommend an adjustable trigger like Nova. The total cost of individual sets may affect your choice, but also remember that even without these additions, the unit will fulfill their basic task, because they can be personally programmed with a trigger and selector, and of course upgraded later. That will be all for today. Let me know in the comments what do you think about the Gate Titan unit, and if you use one, what replica do you have it installed in, and why did you decide on the Titan in the first place? And for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.
No to idziemy się rozstrzelić, no nie?
Tak, Maniuś, jakbyś tutaj przyszedł.